بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه يكافئ مزيدا يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك ولعظيم سلطانك سبحانك لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك فلك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا رضيت ولك الحمد بعد الرضا اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في كل وقت وحين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد حتى تلث الأرض ومن عليها أنت خير الوارثين نويت تعلم وتعليم وتذكر التذكير ونفع انتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وبسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. In the continuation of our reading of the work of Imām al-Sha'ranī, al-Wahhab al-Sha'ranī radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, ونفعنا به وبكم في الدارين آمين في لواكح الأنوار القدسية في بيان العهود المحمدية. We're still on the introduction to the work of the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala. And the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala قال ثم علم يا أخي أن طريق العمل بالكتاب والسنة قد توعرت في هذا الزمان. And so here you're entitled the obligation of acting in accordance with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. As we stand inshallah ta'ala in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the day of judgment, when we stand in court, we have to bring two witnesses. And as the Imam of the Ta'ifatain, Imam Junayd al-Baghdadi, Junayd Muhammad al-Baghdadi, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, I bring forth two witnesses, and my two witnesses are the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama. Upon that day when we stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every single act that we do, whether those acts quote unquote are outward acts, exteriority, whether those acts are inward acts, interiority, that they're only going to be validated in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you act in accordance with what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam came with, and that is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as well as the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. That there is the obligation. Imam al-Sha'ranī rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, ثُمَّ عَلَمْ يَا أَخِيَ. So thereby know, يعني oh my brother, أن طريق العمل بالكتاب والسنة قد توعرت في هذا الزمان. He says, the manner in which one acts in accordance with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as well as the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, that we embrace from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in both regards. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about him, يُعَلِمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, that the Prophet ﷺ teaches them the kitab, which is the Quran, as well as the hikmah. The hikmah here understood as the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, both being the primary sources of revelation unto the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the book to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also reveals the sunnah to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Sayyid of Walad al-Adnan sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares inside the Surah An-Najm about the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, مَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. Now he does not speak of his own desire, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَى. But it's revelation revealed, and that is as it relates to the Quran, but likewise as it relates to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. There's the manner in which that the prophets themselves and the messengers moreover, and our messenger moreover still, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is distinguished and rendered distinct from the entire corpus of creation. That the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's form, and he has now been prepared to receive kalam Allah, to receive the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it manifests in the book, i.e. in the Quran, the eternal speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or it manifests through meaning from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he attributes to himself, but he gives the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam a license to place that meaning that is attributed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first person. He gives the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam license to place it in his own words, quote unquote, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So that we call a hadith al-Qudsiyah. We call that what the holy traditions of the Prophet sallallahu wa sallam, or whether it's meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to the Prophet sallallahu wa sallam without first-person attribution, and thereby the Prophet sallallahu wa sallam quote unquote places it inside of his own words, and that's the Sunnah umuman. In terms of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, and then thereby the Sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu wa sallam, it's about the words of the Rasul, what are called the aqwal. It's about the actions of the Rasul, what's called the a'mal. And it's about the states of the Rasul inward, that you call the ahwal. Or likewise also, it's about the word, the aqwal, and the a'mal, and the ahwal of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, who amplified the Rasul ﷺ inside of his presence, and that the Prophet ﷺ ma'ankar, that the Prophet ﷺ does not rebuke them for any act or any statement, or likewise any state, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, that what you call taqririyya. They call that a sunnah a taqririyya. They call it a corroborative sunnah. More so, it's an amplification of the reality of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as it manifests inside of his environment, a pure environment of his. That was called the companions, radiyallahu anhum wa radu an. But likewise also it's the shama'il. The Imams rahimahum, they categorize also the shama'il, the descriptions and the depictions of the Prophet ﷺ, ظاهرا وباطنا, whether it relates to his khalq, his outward physical form, ﷺ, or it relates to his khuluq, ﷺ, the very fabric of his soul, his character, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. But the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala said the manner in which one acts in accordance with the Quran as well as the Sunnah, he says, radiyallahu anhu, in our day and age has become extremely difficult. And that day, the number one problem, quote, that Muslims are always going to suffer from, their inability, quote unquote, to translate knowledge into practice. I remember Yawm al-Qiyamah, when we stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not jaza'an bima kanu ya'lamuna. It's not as a recompense for that which you used to know, but jaza'an bima kanu ya'maluna. But it's as a recompense for that which you used to do. Hakada damanat yani. Everything is going to revolve around acts that we do inside of this world. And so thereby knowledge, I remember knowledge and practice are inextricably tied together. And even as you see in the language of the Arabs, they're made up of the same three triliteral roots, yani ayn, lam and mim. Ilm, knowledge, ayn, mim, lam, taqlib, which is practice. Okay, lam, mim, ayn, which is illumination. And so thereby by a person being able, mashallah ta'ala, to translate yani knowledge into practice, that is the path to luminosity and illumination in front of the Lord. Jalla jalala wa ta'ata azamatu nur yana ala nur. And so Imam rahimahullah, in his age, which is the last golden age of the Muslims, which is the 10th century of the hijrah of the Muslim era, he says it's become difficult in our time to translate in knowledge into practice. He says, وَعَزَّ سَالِكُهَا, and he says, and those who, quote unquote, who traverse that path are rare indeed. They're few and far between. He says, لِأُمُورٍ, he says, for reasons, عَرَضَتْ فِي الطَّرِيقِ, that confront them on the path, يَطُولُ شَرْحُهَا, and it would, quote unquote, take a lot of time for us to explain it. حَتَّى صَارَ الْإِنسَانُ يَرَى الْأَخْلَاقَ الْمُحَمَّدِيَّةِ. He said that we come to a point that now a person sees the actual character of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, his character trait, al-akhlaq al-muhammadiyya, فَلَا يَقْدُرُ عَلَى وَصُولِ إِلَى تَخَلُّقْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنْهَا, such that they have an inability to embrace any element of it. Like we see the character of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to a point now, people are no longer able to embrace the character of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and realize it. He says, فَلِذَلِكَ كُنْتُ أَقُولُ فِي غَالِبِ عُهُودِ الْكِتَابِ. And so thereby the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala wants to make mention of these covenants and these contracts, which is the very basis of this book. And he says, radiyallahu anhu, yani wardahu. And so thereby, overwhelmingly, when I mention these covenants that we've taken with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over the very Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama, وَهَذَا الْعَهْدِ يَحْتَاجُ يعني مَنْ يَعْمَلُ بِهِ إِلَى Shaykh. He said, however, these quote unquote covenants, that what it is one needs to act in accordance with, they're going to require a Sheikh. They're going to require some type of intermediary who's able, quote, to unlock some type of potential that is clearly, quote unquote, inside of everyone who is now commanded to observe and to embrace the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not never obligate a person to do that which is beyond their capacity. Okay, that which Allah ta'ala makes us accountable for and responsible for, we have the potential for. But what the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala is saying, that often that potential needs to be unlocked. And due to often to reasons, exteriority and exterior reasons, environments in which we live in, the age in which we live in, or what have you, it prevents the human being from unlocking that potential. And so thereby you need, quote unquote, the key holder, the shuyukh, the rasikhun, those who are firmly embedded inside of the soil of Nubuwah, to be able to unlock that potential that is inside of us. وَيُزِيلُ مِنْ تَرِيقِهِ الْمَوَانِعِ, such that he's able thereby to remove from the path of such a person all of these preventatives التي تمنعه عن الوصول إلى التخلق به, that prevent him from arriving at the ability to characterize, to inculcate such attributes inside of himself. أو نحو ذلك من العبارات, again these will be the type of expressions he will use throughout the book, or something similar. إشارة إلى أنه لا يلزم من معرفة الفقيه بالأحكام الوصول إلى عمل بها بل يحتاج مع ذلك إلى شيخ يريه معالم الطريق. And he said that there is an allusion to the fact that it is not necessary from a perspective for what من معرفة الفقيه, from the knowledge that a faqih, a jurist, has of the sacred rulings of the religion, for him thereby to be in and of himself capacitated to act in accordance with that which he knows of legal injunctions. Moreover, يحتاج مع ذلك, but he needs, in addition to that knowledge, he needs a Sheikh, he needs a teacher, he needs somebody who can nurture him, who can unlock that potential that exists within him, يريه معالم الطريق, that thereby is able to show him the landmarks of this path and this Muhammadan path. كما وقع للإمام الغزالي, as we find the likes of al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, the Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, as alluded to, he had to go on a 10-year sojourn, khalwa, radiyallahu anhu warda, just to be able to truly unlock that inward potential that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had placed inside of al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, until he eventually becomes hujjah al-Islam, the binding proof of the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Was Shaykh Izzadeen ibn Abd Salam, likewise the Imam we made mention of in the previous session, the Sultan al-Ulama is in Abd Salam, rahimahullah ta'ala. Likewise also the likes of Sha'ranī himself, rahimahullah ta'ala, Sha'ranī of the Imams, mashallah, of Masr, of the Imams of Azhar, radiyallahu anhu warda. But similar to Imam Ghazali, who is the Imam of the Nizamiyya, radiyallahu anhum wardahum, although they had embraced the outward reality of the religion, they fell well short, quote unquote, of the inner reality of the religion. And it wasn't until meeting the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the key holders was that potential unlocked. And for the likes of al-Sha'ranī rahimahullah ta'ala, it was whom Shaykh Ali al-Khawas, rahimahullah ta'ala. And hakad Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows you outwardly, Imam al-Sha'ranī, huge Imam, knowledge, mashallah ta'ala, and famed throughout the lands of Masr, Diyar al-Misriya. Whereas Imam Ali al-Khawas rahimahullah ta'ala, ummi, and he was ummi, and he's somebody who couldn't read, somebody who couldn't write, hakad hujjat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so like provides you with the likes of whom? Of Ibn al-Mubarak, Tlemsani rahimahullah ta'ala, his relation of Imam of the Qaraween inside the Fez, Imam of outward knowledge, Shuf Kaif, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows him to stumble upon this Imam, Ummi, La Yaktub, doesn't write, La Yaqra, doesn't read. And that, in that case, that's Sidi Abdul Aziz al-Dabagh, rahimahullah ta'ala. How often do we find the Imams of the outward, mashallah, rusukh, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّا كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِندِ رَبِّنَا. Those who are firmly grounded in terms of knowledge, how often they're grounded outwardly, but they have an inability, quote, to translate that inwardly, such that it becomes ahwal wal-aqwal wal-a'mal, radiyallahu anhum wardahum. So Allah ta'ala places them at the feet of somebody who seemingly lacks knowledge. They're not from the circles of knowledge, they're not from the institutions of knowledge. They never sat at the feet of the people of knowledge. Moreover, they can't even read or they can't even write. But what you ultimately understand, those are the true inheritors of the Prophet ﷺ. Remember the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and what institution of knowledge did he go to? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. What people of knowledge did he sit at the feet of? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. La yaqra. And he doesn't read, la yaktub. He doesn't write, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There's not going to be a single knower of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, save that they're rooted inside of that ocean that's called Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The disparity is just how much they take, as al-Busayri rahimahullah ta'ala says, they take from the ocean of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Hakada. Sure, like Imam al-Sha'ranī speaks about himself, rahimahullah ta'ala, with Sidi Ali al-Khawas, rahimahullah ta'ala. Hakada, he wants an opening upon the hands of the great Imam, rahimahullah ta'ala. Until the Imam, rahimahullah ta'ala, Shaykh Imam al-Sha'ranī, rahimahullah ta'ala, prerequisite. You have to sit at my feet, in a sense you've got to get rid of all of that stuff, all of those books that you have, all of that knowledge that you took from books. You're going to get rid of all the books, yani. It gives him a prerequisite, Imam al-Sha'ranī, rahimahullah ta'ala. I mean, if you want to take from me, you're going to take in the same way I took, which is not through books. Shuf, how can it's going to be? See, Imam Sha'ranī, like what do you mean? My books, yani? Like all of my books, all of our books, the extensive library that I have. The Sheikh's telling me to get rid of them, And so what Imam Sha'ranī, rahimahullah ta'ala, hakada nafs. And Sha'ranī said, eventually, khalas, I have a hila. I know what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take all the books and I'm going to sell them. And then I'm going to keep the money. You ready? So I've got the money now. Then I'm going to sit at the hands of the Sheikh Ali al-Khawas, and now when he unlocks the key holder, when he opens me up, mashallah, you feed alayhi, and everything now begins to overflow on me. Then when I've got that, I'll take the money and go and buy the books back. I'll go and buy the books back. I need my library. And so Imam Sha'ranī, rahimahullah ta'ala, says he sells the entire library, mashallah ta'ala, but he keeps the money aside. And then he goes back to Shaykh Ali al-Khawas, rahimahullah ta'ala. And so when he gets in front of the Sheikh asks him, so you want to sit on my feet? He says, yes. And have you did what I told you to get rid of the books? He says, yes. Hakadri says, Sha'ranī says. And so Shaykh Ali al-Khawas says, but you know the money that you attain from selling those books? So he says, what do you mean the money? He says, yeah, that money that you attain. What have you did with the money? He says, what money? He says, no, the money, you sold all your books. The cash, you sold all your books. You still got the money, isn't it? And he goes, yes, Sayyidi. He says, that money, go and give it out to the fuqara. Go and take every single penny and give it out in charity to all the fuqara, all of the poor, every last penny. And so Sha'ranī now, his heart sinks. So Imam Sha'ranī now stands and he's walking beyond the door and his heart's sinking. And Shaykh al-Khawas says, Ya Abd-al-Wahhab Sha'ranī. He says, by the time I've finished with you, you'll have more knowledge than what all those books contain. Just go and give out the money. And hakadra came to pass, radiallahu anhu, yani wa ardahu. The point is, like he's saying here, rahimahullah ta'ala, bal yahtaj ma'a dhalika. Those imams of the outward, they also need shuyukh, the imams of the inward. Yuriyahu ma'alim al-tariq, yurihi ma'alim al-tariq. They ones will unveil him so that they're able to see the landmarks of the path unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kama waqa'a lil Imam al-Ghazali, as occurred to Imam al-Ghazali, kama waqa'a li Shaykh Izzuddin ibn Abd al-Salam, yani radiyallahu anhuma wa ghayrihima. وإنما شايعت كل عهد منه بالأحاديث الشريفة. And then he continues, he says, and each and every single one of the covenants, I'm going to substantiate it, or so to support it, through the noble traditions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. إعلاما لك يا أخي. And this is the declaration unto you, O my brother, بأن عهود الكتاب, in that the actual covenants of the book, this book of mine, مأخوذة من الكتاب والسنة. They're taken directly from the book of Allah Ta'ala, the Quran, and the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, nassan wastinbata, whether an explicit text from the Kitab or the Sunnah, or that which has been derived from an explicit text of the Kitab and the Sunnah. And he says, the reason I did that, لِأَلَّا يَطْرَعَنُ طَاعِنٌ فِيهَا. He says, so that nobody finds a fault therein. Okay? Because remember, Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, when he speaks of the human being, he said the critic is perceptive. I mean, human beings, we're critics. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the human being faculties. And from amongst the faculties Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the human being is the faculty of criticism. Say that the human being often uses that faculty and projects it outward rather than projecting it inward. Because Allah ta'ala given it for good reason. But it was not to project it outwardly. It was to project it inwardly. And you have a faculty to criticize. I remember the rule, and this is often the rule, when somebody criticizes, that the critic is perceptive. Hakada Ghazali says, what does that mean? Critic is perceptive, that when somebody criticizes you, the overwhelming rule, they bang on. They right, yani, in what they're saying. Like, they know what they're saying when they criticize you. Okay? So you, quote unquote, should embrace criticism, mashallah ta'ala, and often a person sees you often better than you see yourself, yani. And often you got to look in the mirror, quote unquote, in order to see yourself. And the Imams like al-Shafi'i, al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, even the tradition of the son of Mary, alayhi salam, that the mirror is your brother is the mirror. Al-mu'min, mir'at al-mu'min, that the believer is the mirror of the believer. Are often, but the problem is with the criticizer. Why? Because from a perspective, it's not the adab for you to criticize. It's the adab for you to criticize yourself. That's why, in the Muwatta, saying Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam, Jesus, the son of Mary alayhi salam. Look at where that should be written in gold. He says, لا تنظر إلى ذنوب الناس كأنكم أرباب. Hakada Jesus says. He says, don't look at the sins of people كأنكم أرباب, as if you're lords besides God. It's for God to look at the sins of people. It's for God to criticize the actions of people. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا تنظر إلى ذنوب الناس كأنكم أرباب. Don't look at the sins of people as if you are lords besides God. فانظر إلى ذنوبكم. فانظروا إلى ذنوبكم. Gaze at your own sins كأنكم عبيد, because you are slaves. هكذا. And the word abid in the Arabic language, disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're a disobedient slave, a bad slave, not a good slave. Or often, Shuf Hakada, Jesus, the son of Mary alayhi salam, is instructing the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama, therein. And so he writes, he's going to tie everything inside of this book to the Quran and to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We said the very basis of the work of al-Sha'ranī rahimahullah ta'ala is the work of Imām al-Mundhari rahimahullah ta'ala, Targhib wa Tarhib. And Imam al-Mundhari's work is just a book entirely of a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as it relates to each and every single one of the topics of religion. He said, I did it this way so that nobody could find fault inside of the book. وَسَدًّا لِبَابِ الدَّسْ. And likewise also to close the actual door of people now forging, attributing to me words or statements that I did not make. Hasada, those who inside of their quoting heart they harbor envy and rancor towards the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala fi hadha al-kitab. Okay, in order to close that door as it relates to this book. كما وقع لي ذلك في كتاب البحر المورود في مواثيق والعهود. He said, because that had happened to me previously. That was a book that I had written and then people had inserted comments, erroneous comments, and then attributed to me as if it was part of the book that I wrote. Imam al-Sha'ranī rahimahullah ta'ala saying inside of his work al-Bahr al-Mawrud fi Mawathiq al-Uhud الذي جمعت فيه عهود المشايخ. It was in that book I gathered therein all of the contracts and the covenants of all of the different scholars التي أخذوها علي, that they took upon me. So all of the different covenants that he took from all of his variant teachers, his shuyukh, his guides unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he compiled that inside of a work rahimahullah ta'ala. فإن بعد الحسد, but therein there were certain people who were envious of me. لما رأى الإقبال الناس على تلك العهود, when they now saw that people had embraced the actual covenants that I took with my shuyukh, and they were bringing that to life inside of their lives. وعرف عجزه عن الوفاء بها, but they found, these people of envy found that they were unable to bring it to life. Okay, they were falling short. They realized their own deficiency بها مدعي المشيخة, but at the same time they were claiming to be shuyukh, but they couldn't bring this to life. عمل حيلة. And so thereby what did they do? Trickery. واستعار من بعد المغفلين من أصحاب نسخة. Okay, remember, you're in the days of manuscripts, isn't it? Not books. He said what they did, in Musharrari saying that they borrowed one of the manuscripts, Musharrari's manuscripts of the book, from one of, so he called them mughafilin, somebody who was heedless, wasn't able to see that my man was out to cause trouble. From my companions, they borrowed a copy. وَوَهَمَهُ شِدَّةُ الْاعْتِقَادِ فِي جَنَابِ. They gave him the erroneous impression that they had a really good opinion of me, that they were a follower of al-Sha'ranī rahimahullah ta'ala. وَكَتَبَ مِنْهَا عِدَّةُ عُهُودٍ, and thereby they inserted into that book a number of different covenants. وَدَسَّ فِيهَا, forging things therein, أُمُورًا مخالفة يعني forging therein, inserting therein things that contradicted ظاهر الكتاب والسنة, the outward understanding of the Quran as well as the Sunnah. وشاعها عني في مصر, and then thereby they began to spread it inside of Egypt, the book, make copies of it, and now what, disperse it or spread it inside of what? Inside of Masr, inside of Egypt. فحصل بذلك فتنة عظيمة, and thereby now there was a great sort of what? Scandal occurred inside of Egypt. في جامع الأزهر, inside of Azhar وغيره, and other than Azhar, against Sha'ranī. He says, وانتصر لي الشيخ ناصر اللقاني. He says, however, of the Sheikh of Azhar, from amongst them Shaykh Nasr al-Laqani, and rahimahullah ta'ala. Likewise, the Shaykh Shihabuddin al-Ramli, and it is great Imams rahimahullah ta'ala, and of Masr and of Azhar, and the Shihabuddin al-Ramli, of the huge Imams of the Shafi'i school. And Imām Ahmad al-Ramli, rahimahullah Shihabuddin, he's the father of Muḥammadan al-Ramli. Usually the late Shafi'i school, rahimahullah ta'ala, it returns back to two great Imams. Both of them from Cairo, both of them from Azhar. One of them, Muḥammad al-Ramli. The second of them, Ahmad ibn Hajar al-Haytami. Ibn Hajar al-Haytami and Muḥammad al-Ramli, rahimahullah ta'ala. Both of them, of their Sheikh, these are all contemporary with whom? With the Sha'ranī, rahimahullah ta'ala. Both of them, their Sheikh is the father of Muḥammad al-Ramli, who was Ahmad al-Ramli, rahimahullah ta'ala. And to the point that, mashallah ta'ala, the entire Shafi school virtually retained back to those two Imams inside of Cairo, inside of Azhar. And so you just see two huge circles of knowledge, one circle for Ibn Hajar, one circle for Muḥammad al-Ramli, rahimahullah ta'ala. Okay, but knowledge competitive, that Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, eventually decides to leave Egypt. Why? Because of the competition between the students of these two Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, but they both shared the same Sheikh, who's the father of Muḥammad al-Ramli, Imam Ahmad al-Ramli, who's assisting Imam al-Sha'ranī herein. So Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, is out of adab for his father, who was my teacher, Ahmad al-Ramli. He decides, mashallah ta'ala, to leave Cairo, and he thereby goes and settles inside of Mecca al-Mukarramah, okay, where he dies, rahimahullah ta'ala. That's why often you hear Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, he's often known as Ibn Hajar al-Makki, rahimahullah ta'ala. But that's where he settled, and he died due to a fitna that was occurred in Egypt between him and the Imam, rahimahullah ta'ala, or their students, moreover, Muḥammad al-Ramli, rahimahullah ta'ala. And these Imams, mashallah ta'ala, of the highest caliber. And you did consider the father, Ahmad al-Ramli, greater than the son, Muḥammad al-Ramli. Imams huge in knowledge. The Shaykh contemporary, with the Sha'ranī, and of the Sheikh of al-Sha'ranī, rahimahullah ta'ala, who's Imam al-Suyuti, the great Imam Jalaluddin Abd al-Rahman al-Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala. That al-Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he claimed that he was a mujtahid mutlaq, that he'd reached the rutbah of al-Shafi'i, of Abu Hanifa, and of Malik, mujtahid. He has his own madhab. I'm sure if he claims it, al-Suyuti, the rutbah of al-Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala. And so the Imams of Egypt, including Ahmad al-Ramli, who's being quoted here, what they decided to do, they summoned Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala. And so they said to Imam Suyuti, Tayyib, you're a mujtahid mutlaq. If you want us to recognize you as a mujtahid, you're going to have to go through varying tests of knowledge. And Suyuti says, I'm ready. And so they give Imam Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala, 16 questions. The Imams Ahmad al-Ramli and others, Shihabuddin al-Ramli, rahimahullah ta'ala, 16 questions. This is just round one of the test. 16 questions. We want the answer, first and foremost, just according to the school of al-Shafi'i. Before we test you beyond the schools of al-Shafi'i, just according to the school of Imam Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala, he saw the 16 questions, renounced ijtihad, his claim to ijtihad. Okay, khalas. Just renounced it, Didn't want to go any further. When he saw the 16 questions, rahimahullah ta'ala, and so that issue was over. And Muḥammad al-Ramli, the son, Muḥammad al-Ramli said, I used to hear about Imam Suyuti claiming that he was a mujtahid mutlaq, and the Imams, including my father, they all put him to the test, was he a mujtahid mutlaq or what have you, and then he asked him 16 questions. And so now Muḥammad al-Ramli, he said, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, I always wanted to know, what were the questions? So he says, so I was able to get hold of the 16 questions that they asked Suyuti. Muḥammad al-Ramli says, the son. So he says, I'm sitting there and I look at the questions. Question number 1, I answered it. 2, answered. 3, answered. 4, 5. He said, I'm answering every single question. 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15. I answered the 15th question. I fell asleep. He said, I fell asleep. And he said, I saw my falling asleep was a karama of Suyuti. It was a miracle of a Suyuti that Allah Ta'ala cast me asleep. So I didn't just do the 16 questions just like that, which you get the point, with the man who Suyuti compared to Muḥammadan Ramli, rahimahullah ta'ala. That's the son. And it was the father and others who posed the questions at the great Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala. When Imam Muḥammadan Ramli, as well as Imam Nasiruddin al-Laqani, rahimahullah, from the Shaykh of Azhar, they're now going to come to the rescue of whom? Of mashallah ta'ala, al-Sha'ranī, in relation to those forgeries, those statements that were forged and inserted inside of the work of al-Sha'ranī in order to try to have people to turn away from the Imam, rahimahullah ta'ala. And look at the nature of the knowledge of these Imams. Look at Suyuti's words. وَجَمَاعَةً وَأَجَابُوا عَنِّي بِتَقْدِيرِ صِحَّةِ ذَلِكَ عَنِّي. They answered, they defended those false statements on my behalf, presupposing that they were from me. And they showed how even though these statements were wrong, how they could be right if they came from a Sha'ranī. You see the nature of their knowledge, the vastness of their knowledge. Did you see that certain Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, that their mawsu'i, that their knowledge is so vast, they can never see a sin. They can always find a way to interpretate something in accordance with the vastness of what the Prophet ﷺ came with. And so now these statements, Imam Sha'ranī is saying, look, they're wrong statements, they're erroneous statements. But the likes of al-Ramli here and al-Laqani, rahimahullah ta'ala, and others are able now to take those statements, i.e., if they came from Sha'ranī, they will have to be right. And we'll show you how they can be right. You with there? Radiallahu ta'ala anhu wardahu. He says, Radiallahu anhu wardahu, he says, وَمَا سَكَنَتْ الْفِتْنَةِ. He says, however, the fitna, the scandal, still continued. It wasn't enough for people. حتى أرسلت للعلماء, until what? I sent the ulama نسختي. I sent them my original copy, the copy that I wrote, التي عليها خطوطهم, upon which, because when the Imams rahimahullah ta'ala, when they compile works, when they write works, what they want is the stamp of approval of the scholars of that age. So they'll send the original manuscript to the various scholars will read it, they'll sort of make their notes or what have you, and they'll give it the stamp of approval eventually. It's like Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala. He said, when I collected the Sunnah of Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala, I took it through all the ulama of the age. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Ali al-Madini and others. He said, كلهم وقع عليه بالقبول. All of them, they give the stamp of approval of the book. You with it? So Sha'ranī did the same. So now he sends the scholars the original manuscript that they themselves had placed their notes in, so they could see the original. And now they can see, these words that are causing the scandal weren't in the original version of it. And so they realize now that somebody now did the deity on the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala. And so he says rahimahullah ta'ala, فَفَتَشُوهَا فَلَمْ يَجِدُوا فِيهَا شَيْئًا مِمَّا دَسَّ حَسَدَ وَشَاعُوا عَنِّي وَمِن تِلْكَ الْوَاقِعَةِ مَا أَلَفْتُ كِتَابًا. And he says, so since that occurred to me, I've never written a book إِلَّا وَتَعَرَّضْتُ فِيهِ لِمَا دَسَّهُ الْحَسَدَ فِي كُتُبِي. He said, I've never written a book save that I found that people have got hold of the manuscripts and are trying to insert words, forge things, and attribute it to me, rahimahullah ta'ala. وَتَبَرَّأْتُ فِيهِ مِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. But me, I declare my innocence. Innocence from anything يُخَالِفُ الْكِتَابِ وَالسُّنَّةِ, that goes against the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in طَلَبًا لِإِزَالَةِ مَا فِي نُفُوسِ بَعْضُ النَّاسِ لِأَلَّا يَحْصُلُ لَهُمُ الْإِثْمُ بِذَلِكَ. And he said, out of the hope that we can sort of uproot that which exists inside of the egos of certain people, and the hope therein is that they don't attain any sin therein by forging upon me. And فهذا كان سبب تشييدي للعهود هذا الكتاب بالأحاديث والآثار. He said, this is the reason why now I've scaffolded each and every single one of these covenants of this book with what traditions of the Prophet ﷺ and likewise of the early people. فإن الحاسد ولو دس فيها شيئا يخالف الأحاديث التي أذكرها لا يروج له أمر عند الناس. And he said, so if anybody is able to once again to forge things into my book, he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, then it will not be able to be spread amongst people. Why? Because of the hadith that are therein that will protect anybody from that which is considered to be erroneous, placing inside of his way. وكيف يستدل المؤلف لكلامه بالأحاديث ثم يخالف منطوقه أو مفهومه. How could a person write a work and then thereby, mashallah ta'ala, substantiate it with the traditions of the Prophet ﷺ, but in what he says, it goes against the explicit, the literal of the text, for instance, of the hadith, and likewise what is understood from the hadith that he said, هذا أمر بعيد, that one, that's not possible really. فالله يحفظ هذا الكتاب. So he says, so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect this book from the like of that. إنه سميع مجيب. Verily he hears and he answers subhanahu wa ta'ala. And back to the topic at hand, Imam al-Sha'ranī, the topic at hand, which is wujub, the obligation, mashallah ta'ala, of following the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and likewise the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Traditionally everybody understands the obligation of following the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you may find certain people, quote unquote, who have a problem with following the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Following the Quran we get, but following the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, there's certain people that historically, quote unquote, don't necessarily get. And so the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala wants to, quote unquote, to make sure we understand the obligation here in wujub iqtida bin nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's as if the Quran itself, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, قُلْ إِن كُنتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونَ يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. It's as if they're saying the Quran is silent upon the obligation of following the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ, tell them, إِن كُنتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِ. Like if you truly love Allah, then follow me. I follow the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He will love you. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says, وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. And whatever the Rasul brings to you, أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ, and take hold of it. وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Or whatever the Prophet negate from you, then you likewise negate it. It's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say that. Inside of His book, جَلَّ جَلَالَهُ وَتَعَالَى عَظَمَتُهُ لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. That you have inside of the Messenger of Allah the best and the most perfect example for you to follow. For whom? لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُ اللَّهَ وَيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ. That for the one who has hope in Allah and the day, Yawm al-Akhir, when he stands in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا, and they make much remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's as if the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لا يؤمن didn't say, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواء تبعا لما جئت به. As he says in Tirmidhi, that none of you believe until your desire is in accordance with what I've brought. And you can care why I've brought. Or the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, inside of Sahih al-Bukhari, where the Prophet, I'm Muslim, with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, ما أمرتكم به فأتوا به ما استطعتم. That whatever I command you to do, that you must do as much of it as you can. وَمَا نَهَيْتُكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. And whatever what I negate from you, I prohibit you from doing, فَانْتَهُوا, that you must negate it. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, فَإِنَّمَا أَهْلَكَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Because what destroyed all the people who went before you, كَثْرَةُ مَسَائِلِهِمْ, their excessive questioning, وَاخْتِلَافُهُمْ بِأَنْبِيَائِهِمْ, and there was subsequent contravention, disagreement with the prophets themselves, going against the prophets themselves. As if he didn't say all of that. And he said all of that, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And Allah Ta'ala said all of that. And then some. Like how somebody says they can hold on to the Quran, but not hold on to the Sunnah. كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ. Was his character not the Quran in the hadith in Sahih Muslim? كَانَ الْقُرْآنِ يَمْشِي بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Was he not the Quran walking amongst people? As Aisha says in both instances, radiallahu ta'ala anha wardaha. How then? How could they call themselves the Qur'aniyun? How could they come Qur'aniyun, the people of the Quran? How can you be the people of the Quran if you're not the people of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam? And a daft statement has never been made. And so hakada wujub al-iqtida bin nabi, the obligation of following the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I'lam ya akhi, and know, oh my brother, anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam lamma kana huwa al-Shaykh al-haqiqi li ummat al-ijaba kulliha. He says, no, oh my brother, since the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, he is the Shaykh in reality. He is the true Shaykh. Hakadar he says, al-Sha'ranī rahimahullah ta'ala. For whom? لِأُمَّةُ الْإِجَابَةِ, in their entirety. Ummat al-Ijaba, the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it divides into two types. Ummah. You have what's called ummah to da'wah, and you have Ummatul Ijaba. And Ummatul Da'wah is who is the Prophet been sent to call. And bu'ithtu ila thaqalain, as he says, I've been sent to the thaqalain, and to the two heavy creatures, jinn and the human being. Bu'ithtu ila al-aswad wal-ahmar. I've been sent to the red and the black. The Prophet says, bu'ithtu ila nasi kaffa. I've been sent to what? To humanity in their entirety. Those statements that we call Ummatul Da'wah. That's the ones he's been sent to, But from amongst them, is what Imam al-Sha'ranī is referring to here, Ummatul Ijaba, are those who answered the call. You see, they heard the call of the Rasul, سَمِعْنَا مُنَادِيًا يُنَادِي لِلْإِيمَانِ فَأَمَنَّا, as in Surah Ali Imran, that we heard the munadi, and the munadi here, the Rasul yunadi lil-Iman, who's now summoning, calling unto faith, فَأَمَنَّا, and thereby we believe. That the Ummatul Ijaba. And so now he's saying, al-Sha'ranī rahimahullah, that as for Ummatul Ijaba, their Shaykh in reality is none but the Prophet ﷺ. He's the true Shaykh. That's the one you're taking bay'ah with the Prophet ﷺ. Everybody else in that silsila, jeel after jeel, Shaykh after Shaykh, ab after ab, all of those in that silsila back to the Prophet ﷺ, faqat at best, yanub an. That they did a substitute for the Prophet ﷺ. They're taking bay'ah on behalf of the Prophet. That hatta in the age of the Rasul, you have the likes of Umar ibn Khattab, rahimahullah ta'ala, who could take bay'ah on behalf of the Prophet. But nobody thinking Umar ibn Khattab, the Sheikh. There's not Umar ibn Khattab, the substitute, the badil there, the representative of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. ساغلنا أن نقول في تراجم العهود والكتاب كلها. Being that is the case, then we have said, the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala has said, when we title each and every single chapter, at the very beginning of every chapter that we will discuss and go through, أُخِذَ عَلَيْنَا الْعَهْدَ الْعَامِ, that what the general covenant has been taken with us min Rasulillah, from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أعني معاشر جميع الأمة المحمدية, and by the us I mean by that all of the Muhammadan nation, all of the community of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فإنه صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا خاطب الصحابة بأمر أو نهي أو ترغيب أو ترهيب, that whenever the Prophet addresses the companions, whether he commands them or he prohibits them or he encourages them, or he instills fear, discourages them, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, انسحب حكم ذلك على جميع أمته إلى يوم القيامة. That ruling now, it flows from the companions to the entire ummah, al-ijaba, of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إلى يوم القيامة, to the day of judgment. He says, rahimahullah ta'ala, فهو الشيخ الحقيقي. He is the true Shaykh. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. For us, بواسطة الأشياخ الطريق, yani the intermediaries are the varying shuyukh of the varying paths, all lead back to the Prophet ﷺ. Oh, bila wasita. But it's possible that a certain people, they don't even have an intermediary. Okay? Liman sara min al-awliya. And that is going to be an elite group from amongst the awliya. Those, mashallah, la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. Those who there's no fear upon them, nor should they ever grieve. And they are the ones, the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala says, اجتمعوا به صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم فاليقظة بشروط المعروفة بين القوم. They're the ones who now gather and they meet the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم in the wake state. And in each and every single generation, he says, and then seeing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the wake state, he says there has to concur with the well-known, mashallah ta'ala, and the preconditions that is well known amongst the people of spirituality. And obviously that is substantiated by the tradition of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, min ra'ani fil manam, and it's yarani yaqadatan, that whoever sees me inside of the wake state, in the dream state, shall see me inside of the wake state, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says. Okay, tradition of saying Aisha, walau qabla al-maut, even if it's just prior to death, that you will see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a wake state, quote unquote, if you've seen him inside of the dream state. That's why seeing the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in dreams is very, very important. Again, the tradition inside of the Bukhari and Muslim and others, من رآني فمنام فقد رآني فإن الشيطان لا يمثل بي لا يخيل بي, and in multiple traditions, whoever sees me in the dream state, they've seen me, because the devil, and they cannot imitate me. The devil cannot act like me. La yukawwinuni in a riwayah. The devil cannot be me. And multiple riwayat in the Sahihain which negates the devil impersonating the Prophet ﷺ, so that when you see him in the dream state, that it's not him, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, but it's a trickery of the devil. The Rasul ﷺ anchors reality. But from seeing the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the dream state, then, as the Prophet ﷺ says, Sayarani yaqadatan, hakadha al-Bukhari, the lafz of the Bukhari, then they will see me in the wake state. Sure. And then likewise in the lafz there in al-Bukhari, yani, of Abu Qatada, Sayara al-Haqqa, shuf, the third degree, they will see al-Haqq, al-Haqq, God. Shuf, all of that, the path to the seeing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ru'yat Allah. But it starts with seeing the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam inside of the dream state. Yet there are Imams, rahimahullah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rahimahullah ta'ala, who now, what does it mean to see the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam inside of the wake state? You know, the most famous Imams that people often quote is of the Shaykh of the Shaykh here, of al-Sha'ranī, rahimahullah ta'ala, and the Shaykh Ahmed ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, rahimahullah ta'ala, Amir al-Mu'mineen for the hadith of the last two greats of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, yani, rahimahullah ta'ala. Likewise from Cairo and Egypt, or is also from al-Asqalan, Asqalan, Gaza, in Asqalan, as the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Khair al-Ribat, Ribat al-Asqalan, at the end of time, the best fortress, yani. In war is the fortress of Asqalan. The Prophet ﷺ, the fortress of Gaza. The Prophet ﷺ said, like he says, subhanAllah, look how they've decimated Gaza. Look at these people. Evil, yani. It's like Franz Fanon said, the wretched of the earth. Look how they decimated Gaza. But even if they decimated Gaza, sure, if that's the heck of that, they decimated Gaza, then you see man start coming out of tunnels, innit? Like after all of that, you thought everything was gone. A man coming out of tunnels and shoo, are off to him still. And he subhanAllah, if Allah Ta'ala wants to protect his people, he protects his people. Jalla Jalaluhu wa ta'ala. But hakada Ibn Hajar, also Ibn Hajar is called Amir al-Mu'mineen fil Hadith, and memorized in excess of 300,000 hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the great Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, yani sadiq, yani fil qalb, the one who has the great commentary, mashallah, upon al-Bukhari, usually the greatest commentary considered upon al-Bukhari, was whom, mashallah ta'ala, is a commentary of Ibn Hajar. It's called Fath al-Bari. Fath al-Bari, and Sharh al-Bukhari by Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala. Who was contemporary with another Shaykh who's called Badr al-Aini, rahimahullah ta'ala. Also the great Imams. Well, saved that Badr al-Aini there, he's what? He's a Hanafi. Well, he's a Hanafi, innit? But like Ibn Hajar, there's a Shafi'i. Raft. And so Ibn Hajar, hakada shuf. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala writes a commentary upon the great Sahih al-Bukhari of Imam Muhammad Ismail al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala. Hakada the Imam said, we'll see what the Imam said. That commentary he wrote, khalis liwajhillah, was for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Badr al-Aini now, the great Imam of the Hanafi school rahimahullah ta'ala, he wants to write a commentary. But when he sees the iqbal, that people are embracing the work of Ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, he wants to write a commentary that's better than the commentary of Ibn Hajar, yani rahimahullah ta'ala. Yani, the point what you want, the motive, Hakad Imam said, the motive of Ibn Hajar was Allah. The motive of Badr al-Aini was Ibn Hajar. I want to write one better than Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala. The Imams, Hakad Imam said, they go as far as saying that the commentary of Badr al-Aini upon Bukhari is better. Because the human being, whatever the human being strives for, he achieves, yani. So he actually wrote a commentary that is better than Ibn Hajar. How can he say? You can so by the commentary of Al-Aini rahimahullah ta'ala upon al-Bukhari. But, yani shuf, it didn't have the stamp of Qabul. Like if you ask people about the commentary of Badr al-Aini, most people don't know about that commentary. But if you ask them about the commentary of Ibn Hajar, oh, Fath al-Bari, mashallah. It's as if you can't mention Bukhari unless you mention Fath al-Bari. Because come minhum of the Shaykh who memorize Fath al-Bari. He memorized it all in all of its volumes, like 18 odd volumes. Memorize it, mashallah, ala dhahr al-qalb. But how many memorize the commentary of Badr al-Aini, rahimahullah ta'ala? I'll point there, just to give you context, Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, when he discusses the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, man ra'ani fil manam, yani sayarani yaqadatan, then they will see me in the wake state. He discusses it, rahimahullah ta'ala, And his understanding doesn't necessarily concur with the understandings that most of the Imams have, rahimahullah ta'ala, the likes of al-Sha'ranī, rahimahullah ta'ala. And if first Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, says the al-fadh, that tradition there are 3 different ways it came to us from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. من رآني في المنام فسيراني يقظة. Then they will, للتنفيس يعني, in the future, they're going to see me in the wake state. 1. من رآني في المنام كأنما رآني في اليقظة. Then it's as if, the second relation, you get the point, it's as if they've seen me in the wake state. من رآني في المنام فقد رآني يقظة. And whoever sees me in the dream state has indeed seen me inside of the wake state. And so the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala said, in order to understand it, we need to understand the varying ways it's come down to it, the 3 different narrations. Although the differences are slight, they can be important. And so Ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, he goes through, like, what does it mean? Does it mean you're actually really seeing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the wake state? He's saying no. He gives different opinions. It's not you're seeing the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the wake state, but you're seeing some type of projection of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but you're not seeing him in reality. The one who sees me in the wake state, that hadith is only for the Sahaba. And he gives that opinion, Ibn Hajar, that they're the ones who saw them in the dream state, and so then they saw them in the wake state in the age when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam walked the earth. Whoever sees me in the dream state, then they will see me in the wake state, so long as, Ibn Hajar brings it, so long as they actually have the mirror of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you've got the mirror of the Rasul, and they gaze into the mirror of the Rasul, they will see the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the wake state. Ibn Hajar says, bring that tradition, that they're based upon the tradition of whom? Of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, isn't it? Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, rahimahullah ta'ala, said once he sees the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam after the death of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the dream state. He sees the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when he wakes up, it's difficult for him now to be awake without the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam due to seeing the Prophet in the dream state. So what does he do? He said, I go to Maymuna. He goes to Maymuna, who's his aunt, the sister of his mother, but she's also the last of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I go to Maymuna, radiallahu ta'ala anha, wardah, and explain to her the issue. And so Sayyidina Maymuna goes in, and then she comes out, and she comes out with like a cloth, a garment of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she says, just take hold of this will help you, yani. So he said, I take hold of the garment of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's going to bring me back down, isn't it? It's going to normalize me. I'm holding onto the garment, but still the state, no. It's not, yani, it's not. So I give it back to Maymuna, no, I'm still in the state. You have to help me more. So he said, Sayyidina Maymuna goes inside, and it's the house of the Rasul from the Hujarat, and she comes out with the mirror of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so she gives the mirror of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abdullah ibn Abbas, rahimahullah ta'ala. And Abdullah ibn Abbas, I take hold of the mirror, I look at it, there's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yaqadatan. There's the Rasul, right in the mirror. And so Ibn Hajar and others are using this, quote unquote, as a type of proof that this سيراني يقظة فقد رآني يقظة كأنما يراني يقظة, that this relates to the mirror of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But they also bring the opinion that no, it literally means what it literally means. You read it? That you're seeing him yaqadatan, in reality, in front of you sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But you also bring the opinion that sayarani yaqadatan, that relates to Yawm al-Qiyamah, not this world, but relates to the next world. So they bring varying opinions, 6 different opinions they bring, radiallahu anhum wardahum. Ibn Hajar as Fath al-Bari, what does it mean? You will see the Rasul yaqadatan. What the Imams of Sha'ranī wants here, you will see the Rasul yaqadatan as we're gazing at each other now. Okay? That's what he wants. And what Imam Sha'ranī rahimahullah also wants from that is a khususiyah for the akabir, the kibar al-awliya, and the greatest of those who yanub, who deputize for the Prophet ﷺ from the class of what? Of these protected friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, known as the awliya of Allah, Jalla Jalaluhu wa ta'ala ta'azamatuh. To the point that Sidi Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh, rahimahullah ta'ala, in substantiation of this, Sidi Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that the seeing of the Rasul ﷺ, first and foremost, is only gifted to the kibar of awli, of the people of wilaya, when they reach a point when that wilaya can no longer be taken away from them. So somebody can become a wali, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can take it away from them. It's just that they become a wali, you know what I mean? They become something different. Allah Ta'ala can do that. So when somebody has wilaya, they're usually initially upon very unstable ground. Do they advance, progress, or do they digress? Like Sayyid Abdul Aziz himself, when he says he has his fath, they send him to one of the great Sheikh of Fez, who's going to explain to him like what has taken place to him, because he doesn't understand the world he's moved into, Show off where he starts now, the gazes into the world of the unseen. He said he's inside the cosmos, the Pleiades, you can see it all. He said from Fez, you can see a woman in the midst of Europe breastfeeding a child. It's just the veils are coming off for Sayyid Abdul Aziz, rahimahullah ta'ala. And so when they send him to one of the Sheikh of Fez, who's going to explain what's taken place, what he needs to do, then he finds, quote unquote, a man there waiting there, supposedly trying to see the Sheikh as well. And his name is Abdullah al-Borneo from Borneo, West Africa. And so waiting for the Sheikh, the Sheikh ain't coming. So in the end, those two strike up a relationship. Sayyid Abdul Aziz al-Dabagh and Sayyid Abdullah al-Borneo, rahimahullah ta'ala. And so Sayyid Abdul Aziz will tell you about the chronicles of the adventures that both of them have in the world of wilaya, metamorphosizing from physics into sort of other shapes and what have you. And it's stuff that you're like, subhanallah, when he explains it, Sayyid Abdul Aziz. Eventually, to cut a really long story short, Sayyid Abdul Aziz al-Dabagh, he comes to Sayyid Abdullah al-Borneo. And he says to him, you know what's just happened? He said, what has happened? He said, I've just seen the Prophet Yakhavatan, the Rasul right in front of me, right there physically in front of me. So Sayyid Abdullah, he says to him, هذا فراق بيني وبينك. Like what's in the Khidr says to Moses, هذا فراق بيني وبينك. Now I've got to leave you. He said, what do you mean you got to leave me? He says, see, from the beginning, I was sent from the Diwan of the Awliya, the assembly of the Awliya, the high assembly. I've been sent from the high assembly because the opening that you had, that is a rare opening. So I was sent to stabilize you, to make sure you progress, you don't digress. That's why the only reason I've been with you, been sent from the high council, And the sign that you're going to progress and never digress, never retrogress, is seeing the Prophet ﷺ wake state. Firaq bayni wa baynak. You're good now. Disappeared, never saw them again. Never saw them again. And so that's what Imam al-Sha'ranī rahimahullah ta'ala wants. Such people, and Sayyid Abdul Aziz himself rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that if a person claims to see the Prophet ﷺ in the wake state, yumtahan. Then just like Suyuti, with a Ramli and all this, we're going to bring them to the council, we're going to test you. And tell us what you saw. Not only tell us what you saw, Sayyid Abdul Aziz al-Dabagh says there are 2,999 different stages to seeing the Prophet ﷺ. Notice you can talk about the veils of light, that's something different. But the 2,999 different stages before you see the Prophet in the wake state. They're going to be tested, Sayyid Abdul Aziz al-Dabagh says, in each and every single stage. Tell us the first stage, tell us what you saw. Go to the second stage, tell me what you saw, describe it. Go to the third. You've got to go through 2,099 of them and describe every single one of them before they say, Naam, you've seen the Prophet inside of the wake state. Because remember, I think there's two things here, are often, here's the first. Human beings lie. Like human beings lie. And then if human beings don't lie, human beings, they imagine things. They see things that are not there, you know what I mean? They're not there. Like in cycle, like perpetual set and all this. They see things that are not there. That's why Allah always subhanahu, look at Allah Ta'ala, nasiyatin, kadhibatin, khati'ah. You know what Allah Ta'ala says? When Allah Ta'ala points at the frontal lobal system, neocortex there, Allah Ta'ala calls it what? Kadhiba. It lies. Khati'ah. It makes mistakes, it imagines things that are not true. So in order for it to be true, you're saying that you're seeing the Rasul in front of you, there, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, okay, yumtahan. Then one is going to be tested by the Imams who know at each and every single stage what a person should be seeing. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, wardahum. I'll point to such people, radiyallahu anhum, wardahum, they're the ones who take directly from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Directly, and that's like the Shaykh of Sha'ranī. Suyuti rahimahullah ta'ala, he saw the Prophet in wake state over 70 times, Suyuti himself. The Shaykh of al-Sha'ranī rahimahullah, or of the Shaykh of al-Sha'ranī. How many times Sayyid Ali al-Khawas, how many times Imam al-Sha'ranī himself, rahimahullah ta'ala. These are the ones who meet the Prophet in the wake state, with the preconditions that are well known. Sayyid Abdul Aziz al-Dabagh explains for amongst the people of spirituality. وَقَدْ أَدْرَكْنَا بِحَمْدِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. He says, and we have met, and all praise be to Allah, exalted be He, جَمَاعَةً, a number, مِنْ أَهْلِ هَذَا الْمَقَامِ, of the people of this station, this high station. You meet with the Prophet ﷺ inside the awake state. And like whom? Sidi Ali al-Khawas. Like my Shaykh, Sidi Ali al-Khawas. Shaykh Muḥammadan al-Adl. And likewise, Shaykh Muhammad ibn Inan. Shaykh Jalaluddin al-Suyuti. He mentions of them. We've met with those who meet with the Prophet in the awake state. وَضْرَابُهُمْ, and they like. So radiallahu anhum ajma'een. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with them. Inshallah ta'ala, do we have any questions? Inshallah ta'ala, any questions? Naam. Any question here, finding people, the shuyukh who unlock the inward, it's hard, so what would be the substitute? Yeah, okay, but it's not hard for us to go to Ibiza, innit? Or it's not hard for us to go to Jamaica, or wherever we go, Seychelles, Costa del. It's not, that ain't hard, isn't it? Somehow it's easy for us, even some of us Skegness or whatever it is, the Blackpool. It's not hard for us to go to the places that we want to go to. And then we're going to sort of say, well, it's difficult for me to go to the places that we need to go to. Sorry, the Fiqh don't, Raftum. Like, the Sahaba, look where they came from. Like, even when you look at the Sahaba, who come, the Imams, As'ad ibn Zurara and those Imams, Rahim, the first Imams from Medina, who come to the Prophet ﷺ. How difficult it was to them. Now, you're doing Medina in 2 hours, a new bullet train or whatever they got you in 2 hours. Them, it took them 2 weeks to get from Medina to Mecca to meet the Prophet ﷺ. I remember now, those 2 hours are like, you comfortable in it? Them 2 weeks, they lacked comfort. The difficulty that they went through just in order, mashallah, to meet the Rasul ﷺ. I mean, how many a person set out to meet the Rasul ﷺ, never met him? The Rasul had transitioned to the Barzakh. How many people set out to meet the Prophet ﷺ, like Zayd bin Amr bin Nufail, who they transition to the Barzakh, they die on the path, they don't get to see the Rasul ﷺ. What I'm saying, if meeting the Rasul, the Shaykh al-Haqiqi, through his Nawab, through his deputies, is that important? Oh, where there's a will, there's a way, yani. And if deen means that much to you, where there's a will, there is most certainly a way, yani. Well, no, let's mention any names, but I think the point is the point. But go on. What's that mean? Okay, then, but now you're the Shaykh in it. You get the point? Because you're now defining what you need. You're defining how much proximity you need. You're defining, quote unquote, the manner in which you want to take. You're defining. That ain't that. You get the point? Like next time you go to sort of Bradford General, inshallah ta'ala keep you away from it. Like, well, next time you do go, make sure you tell the doctor on duty exactly how you want him to deal with you and to operate on you. Make sure you tell him that, innit? And how much time you need, make sure you tell him that. It doesn't work that way. You get the point? I remember Habib Ali once mentioned a person, we were there, mentioned a person inside the Tareem. When the person's saying this, I need, and I need, and I need. You show this and the other, and this and that. It's got a lot to say. Habib Ali just said something really profound. Habib Ali says, look, Shuf, look, you're in Tareem, you're here with us, we're not there with you. You came here for something that we have. We didn't go to you for something that you supposedly have. Do you understand that? That's kind of really, really important. And remember, you project that into the age of the Prophet ﷺ. Think about it, 124,000 companions. Now you think they are all at close quarter to the Prophet ﷺ? It wasn't that. To the point that we see in the book of Allah Ta'ala, to even speak to the Prophet ﷺ, you have to give sadaqah before it. So you want to speak to the Rasul, you're going to have to give in charity. Sadaqah, now you can get an appointment with the Prophet ﷺ. How can we have in the book of Allah Ta'ala? Happened in the age of the Rasul. Whereas the Prophet ﷺ, what's important under the Shaykh, what does the Prophet ﷺ do? He establishes imams, elite around him. And now the general masses of the companions, they're going to take from these elites that have been established by the Prophet ﷺ. Although the Prophet now instructs them, yani, suffice me from people, but don't prevent people from me. Look, you with it? Me now, I've given you enough that you're sufficient to teach now the masses of companions that I have. But if they, for whatever reason, want to come past you, yani, to come directly to me, make sure you're not a preventative. The door can't be closed to reach me. But the Rasul, remember, there's a system that the Rasul establishes, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَهَكَذَا, yani, generation after generation after generation. Yani, you know, for us, you know, the great Imam, rahimahullah ta'ala, is an example, Abdullah ibn Maslama, al-Ka'nabi, rahimahullah ta'ala. Ka'nabi, yani, mashallah, of the ruwat of Muwatta of Imam Malik. Half of the Muwatta, and he read to Malik, rahimahullah, Imam al-Ka'nabi, rahimahullah ta'ala. That Ka'nabi, he goes to Yemen to sit with Abd al-Razzaq al-San'ani, the Imam, rahimahullah ta'ala. I'm just showing you. Abd al-Razzaq al-San'ani, the Shaykh of Shafi'i, the Shaykh of Ahmed ibn Hanbal, al-San'ani there. When he gets to Sana to sit with the San'ani, San'ani wouldn't even let him inside of his circle, yani. The great Ka'nabi, Muhammad al-Muslim, wouldn't allow him to sit inside of his circle. The point I'm saying, that you can get into the circle, oh, mashallah. So you name me a sheikh that you can't even get into, you can get into their circle. Be grateful you can get in. Because the reality of it is, if Ka'nabi can't get into the circle of a San'ani, we should not get into the circle of the Imams in our day and age. If you get my point? That's really, really important, yani. Any questions, inshallah ta'ala, any questions? Yani, Allah A'lam, the Faqih would say that question, don't worry, believe me. They got there for a reason, the Shaykh. You with it? And the second thing, the Shaykh know what they're doing. It's really important, they know what they're doing, yani. And obviously, we don't. That's why we need them and they don't need us. We don't know what we're doing. They know what they're doing. So now, you know, part of it, like Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, in Jannah gives us the qa'idah, where he says, وَعَلَى اللَّهِ الْبَيَانِ. It's upon God to make things distinctly clear. وَعَلَى رَسُولِهِ الْبَلَاغِ. And it's upon the messenger to convey the clarity that comes from Allah ta'ala. What's upon us then? Shafi'i says, وَعَلَيْنَا تَسْلِيمٌ. It's just upon us to submit, yani. And we reach in this religion in accordance to how much and how able we are to submit to the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the nawab, those who deputize for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anyone have any questions, inshallah ta'ala, any questions? Do you have any questions? Jazakumullah khairan. I think our dear and beloved Amr wants to remind some of you if you've not already been reminded, inshallah ta'ala.
yours. Mine. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ta'ala ala Sayyidina Muḥammadan wa alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I just want to spend a few minutes just speaking about an important initiative. Maybe some of you have seen some of these slides, but I'll try and be brief just to go through them, inshallah. But there are some important messages here, inshallah, to convey. Just rolling back a few years, in 2021, we started 2022. We started fundraising under an initiative called the £1 Million Challenge, and that was essentially to raise funds for Mustafa Mount, and in particular the Rawḍah Mosque. It was called the £1 Million Challenge. Alhamdulillah, I think in 2022 we raised about 1.3 million pounds. 2024 we didn't raise funds. This year, alhamdulillah, we're back on the trail, inshallah, to try again with the £1 Million Challenge initiative, and this time through an initiative called the CAF initiative. The CAF initiative is essentially where we're commissioning this individual mashallah who'll be here in the UK on Thursday, Muthana al-Ubaidi. Inshallah is going to be handwriting the Quran for us. It's a 3.5-year project. He's just currently finishing off his third Quran, the third one being for the Prince of Jordan, and it's going to become their national Quran, inshallah, going forward. So it's a great honor for us to actually be able to connect through to him, few Shaykh, and he's mashallah coming to the UK to speak to us, inshallah, this coming Thursday. So there is a project, inshallah, going to be launching this project this coming Thursday at the Wentworth Suite in Oldham. It's going to be a very blessed event. Sheikh Ibrahim is going to, inshallah, be there. We're going to have the Mawlid there, inshallah. It's going to start promptly at 7 o'clock because it's the blessed night for Shaban as well. Once Sheikh realised it was a Thursday, he said the Mawlid doesn't go amiss, so we start the event early. So inshallah we'll have the Mawlid, inshallah. Likewise, Qari Tawfiq's coming from Morocco, I think, arriving tomorrow, inshallah. He'll be reciting the Surah Yasin, and also he'll be reciting various qiraat as well, because it's a night of the Quran. And then inshallah we'll listen to Sidi Muthana, inshallah, speak about the writing of the Quran, inshallah, the history of that. And likewise we'll have a charity fundraiser as well, inshallah, where we'll be raising funds for this project. Those of you who haven't yet booked on, this is the QR code. You can still get tickets, inshallah. It's £30, or maybe £35 for you to book on, inshallah, come this week, inshallah. I know people are speaking about, well, we've got a program now, local mosque, alhamdulillah. We want to go to Mosque Salatul Tasbih, you can still read your Salatul Tasbih. No mosque will be having a Mawlid, mashallah, like we have. Likewise, we're having mashallah, a very blessed, Qari coming to the UK to recite the Qiraat. We'll have the Dua of Nisha Shaban that we read as well, likewise. And inshallah, we'll give in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, inshallah, on that night as well. So inshallah, it's going to be a very blessed night, inshallah. People always, it makes me smile, people always ask, I always get phone calls when we have these gatherings, where's Shaykh Ibrahim going to be? Where's Shaykh Ibrahim going to be? Is he in Liverpool? Is he Muslim? Where is he going to be? Inshallah, he'll be at the Wentworth Suite, inshallah, leading the Mawlid, inshallah. So what's the challenge? The £1 Million Challenge this year, inshallah, is to have every single ayah of this handwritten Quran sponsored. Okay, and if we can achieve that, inshallah, that's all 114 surahs, have them all sponsored by either via people donating or crowdfunding, inshallah, will raise in excess of £900,000. In fact, it will be £1 million, just over £1 million, inshallah, will raise. That's what we're trying to raise, inshallah. What's the money going to be used for? For this site. Okay, we still have over £1 million worth of debt on this site that was acquired to buy this site. When all the money that's been donated today, mashallah, kind of like in the years gone by, have been from students of Shaykh Ibrahim, first and foremost, predominantly. Okay, we've been in Bradford now for 3.5 years. Okay, and no matter how much we've reached out to, now there are certain individuals, some are really blessed with us in this gathering, mashallah, he's really worked hard with us through his vast connections. Okay, very wealthy individuals. Okay, to help us to kind of like fundraise going forward. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plans what Allah wills what He wills. The bottom line is that alhamdulillah, we've got to wherever we've got to, first and foremost by the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, by us individuals who've gone through the micro madrasa system for the last 10, 15 years, okay, and they've become students, okay. I remember there's one individual, mashallah, he said to me, he said, you know, there's a time when, early in the days, so I said to Sheikh Ibrahim, I said, I've got a fiver, probably can't help, but I've got a car, I can drive you wherever you need to go to, and that's how I can help the at that time. Now fast forward, mashallah, 15 years, he's probably one of the biggest donors that the trust has, mashallah. So therein, kind of like, you know, the relationships have been formed, and it's you people like yourselves who, mashallah, who've got us to where we've got to now, inshallah, and likewise, will take us forward as well, inshallah, to see the vision that some of you started to see now, inshallah, transpire, when, inshallah, this site becomes the equivalent of the Alhambra of Spain, inshallah. So how are we going to achieve this? By sponsoring surahs, donating surahs, okay? So what we've done is we've come up with a very simple formula on how to sponsor or donate surahs. What's the formula? Count the number of ayahs in the surah, times it by 114, add 786 for the Bismillah. Okay, that's how the formula has been derived. Okay, and now I've just had an update now, but I think 22 surahs have been sponsored, where people are going to raise money for them, privately or however, and 32 have been donated. Okay, that people have donated. Some beautiful donations to share with you. Okay, so Al-Fatiha was £7,000, okay, to sponsor it, and it went straight away. Okay, one of the khidmah people working on the project took it straight away. Went to Sheikh Ibrahim, said, Sheikh Ibrahim, it's not going to be fair. You know, people are going to say Surah Fatiha 7, you know, it's the heart, you know, the Quran, mashallah, the greatest surah of the Quran has gone straight away. I was trusting with Sheikh Ibrahim, it should be 70k. Sheikh was, no, 7k, make it affordable. Then Sheikh, okay, give it to 7 people. All 7 people have taken it for £7,000. Today I had a phone call this morning from a brother. I saw this message go out. I want Surah Fatiha. I said, it's gone. I said, I want Surah Fatiha. I said, I can't do anything. He said, knock somebody off. I said, I can't knock somebody off. I want Surah Fatiha. I said, you can't have it. So what does he take? He takes Surah Ikhlas for £14,000. There's 3 of them. He said, I'll take Surah Ikhlas and Surah Hujurat as well. Round it up to £20,000, mashallah. He's given. These next 5 surahs were Sheikh Ibrahim's campaign that he launched on Friday night. Okay, on Friday night he launched the campaign. They all come to £54,000. Okay, all 5 surahs, Surah Yunus, Hud, Yusuf, Rawḍah, Ibrahim, come to £54,000. So we started fundraising on Friday night. We'll start with today. Okay, yesterday we were in Bradford Micro Madrasa. The women, if there was a boxing match, okay, the men were knocked out. The man gave up in the first round. Okay, we're all back to Saturday. Okay, fundraising. Micro Madrasa, we mentioned the surahs. Against the boxing match, the women, okay, the man was giving up after 6-7 rounds. Go back to Friday night, mashallah, the men won. Wiped the floor clean. Why? It was a men's only event. There were no women there at all. What's the point? Women, mashallah, gave. No, this surah here, Surah Hud. Yesterday, Sheikh Ibrahim mentioned Surah Hud, Nabi Allah Hud going on, Habib Umar's there. I want £14,000 to be raised today. £14,808. We finished the gathering, a woman comes to me. I want to give to our Surah Hud. Okay, how much? I want to give the whole amount. How? I said, how? We're going to fundraise? You're going to crowdfund? No, I want to give it now. Okay, I'll send you an email. No, I want to give it now. Bank details. Very surreal. First time it's ever happened to me. So I'm stood there, getting the bank details, and she punches it in, £14,808 donated in its entirety yesterday. In the evening, okay, similar. Sister comes for this one, sister comes for this one, sister comes for this one. Where's the brothers? There's a sister puts her hands up. Sheikh Ibrahim says, who wants to give a surah? Sister puts her hands up. Sheikh Ibrahim says, you want to give a surah? Yes, Sheikh, you decide. Sheikh Ibrahim, Sheikh, Baqarah. He says, okay, I'll take Baqarah. Now Sheikh Ibrahim says, okay, but listen, we understand Surah Baqarah is £33,000 to sponsor it, okay? Come and see us if you have difficulty. So you go to Sheikh Ibrahim in the office. Sheikh Ibrahim, there's my bank account. I need this for this, the rest of it's yours. He said, I came from, I think, Makkah Sharif, Medina Sharif just today. I made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bring some good out of me. And this is what happens the very following day. So Sheikh Ibrahim says to her, Baqarah is not for you. Takes Ayatul Kursi, which is £7,000. No, Sheikh, I want more. I want more, give me something else. So Sheikh gives another surah. Comes up to me, I want to make that donation now, straight away. Okay? These are sisters, mashallah, and they gave like the wind, mashallah. Yesterday, mashallah, Sheikh Ibrahim's campaign, whose target was to raise £54,000. By the end of yesterday, we were on £84,000 have been pledged for that campaign, mashallah. That's by people just giving, okay, and seeing the reward for it, inshallah. Anybody who reads that, it's sadaqah jariyah for them, inshallah. Some of these other surahs have been taken, so actually, my grey wallet, the grey bag there, yeah, just open that up. There's some sheets in there, to pass them around. So maybe some people on groups have seen all the surahs, they can all be taken, inshallah. Some of them we taken, some of them haven't. Some of them here, for example, Al-Hajj, Al-Isra, still available. Qaf, Waqiya's gone, Zilzala's gone, Quraysh has gone as well. So there's something in there for everybody, inshallah, to help towards this project. And inshallah, we reach the targets, inshallah. So this is what's going to be circulated. You can just see there, okay? Again, there's something there for everybody. Support us, inshallah, on this project. Okay, enable us. If we get every single ayah surah sponsored, that's in excess of £1 million we'll have raised for this site, inshallah, to take it forward. Okay, to implement the vision that is being laid out first and foremost in front of us, inshallah. But moving forward, okay. So Shaykh Ibrahim last night completed his campaign. Shaykh said, let's move forward. Okay, so we're moving forward today with the Twin Clouds, which is the £1 million campaign, which is sponsoring for Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Ali Imran. If I can just, Shaykh Ibrahim? No? Okay. Okay. Sheikh's tired. Okay. So inshallah today then, I'm looking at the brothers today. Okay. We want to inshallah raise funds for, here's the QR code for the page. Okay, this will take you light, so phones out. Come on. Everyone phones out. Everyone can at least give an ayah, 5 ayahs, 10 ayahs inshallah towards this campaign. Okay. And the aim is to reach £57,000, and that will then sponsor both those two surahs. Now, genuinely, you know what? This Quran project, it's one of the visions of Shaykh Ibrahim. When he said to me a few years ago, he said, there are some things that are trust that we need to do. One is to make the hijrah route of the Prophet ﷺ. 2 is to visit the wall of Ya'juj and Ma'juj. 3 is to have our own Quran. Okay, but that's just one Quran. Inshallah, the goal here is that every single year in Rajab, we'll fundraise for the other 6 Qurans, the other 6 recitations. We'll fundraise for them as well. So that'll be the whole 7 set, inshallah, in 11 years' time. That comes to fruition, and that, from what we know, has never ever been done by anybody. Where all 7 recitations of the Quran, handwritten by world-leading calligraphers, okay, available, produced as just one set, inshallah. That's the vision here, inshallah. What a legacy for us to leave behind. Now, Shaykh Ibrahim was speaking yesterday. Is there anybody who sponsors an ayah in this project, a surah in this project, okay? If someone takes a surah, we will make sure that when the calligrapher is writing that surah, he makes intention for that individual or that person who they've donated that surah for, inshallah, okay? Right at the outset. As that people always say, and I said this a few times, there's a nice jealousy inside of me that I wasn't in the circles when Felicity House was acquired. Some brothers were. I wasn't in those circles. I missed out on the opportunity. But whatever foundations were laid then, whatever donations were given then, they're getting a part of all of this as well. Because it's all built from there. Okay? Here now is our opportunity to, right at the beginning, okay, sponsor this very first Quran. Okay? And even Shaykh Ibrahim said yesterday, don't worry, Habib Umar will gaze upon this Quran as well, will read upon this Quran as well. Okay? Inshallah, this Quran will go east, west, north, south, inshallah, it will be distributed everywhere. And one of the goals here is that, inshallah, it becomes a standard Quran in the UK that people acquire and read. And again, we don't just stop there. One is to produce the seven recitations of the Quran. Second is to also get a translation of the Quran as well. We've already reached out to one individual who said, I can't take on that project. So Sheikh's missing a list of people we're going to reach out to, inshallah, for them to translate the Quran as well. And then to make it onto an online portal, okay, where people can learn to read, etc., so on and so forth. So really, it's an incredible opportunity to really, invest into this project right from the outset. And ultimately, this is all for our akhirah, isn't it? Whatever we do in this world, we leave that legacy for people. And particularly, I'm reaching out to people in Bradford particularly because this is your site, this is your centre. Now, I remember the very first day we came to see this site when it was on the market. A brother contracted and Sheikh, we came to see the site, and we sat in the brother's office. I remember we sat there, and his words to Sheikh Ibrahim were, Sheikh Ibrahim, Bradford needs you. Okay? We've got to make this site happen. Because why? Because Bradford needs you. Well, you got Sheikh Ibrahim. Okay, you got him. Okay? To the extent that there's sadness in Liverpool. You know, that, look, Sheikh, you're not here no more. We don't see you no more. You know, most of your time has been spent here. You know, it's a massive blessing for you. Okay? Now, really, it's for the people of Bradford to take this project on and run forward with it. And honestly, I know I feel for some brothers as well, mashallah, kind of like, you know, who, you know, one in particular, mashallah, I know, who's worked so hard to try and raise funds from people who would think it's nothing, it's pocket change for them. But the heart is connected to where the heart's connected. I know that all your hearts are connected, kind of like, you know, to wherever they're connected. So really, it's for all of us, it's kind of like, you know, to champion this project, you know, and take it forward and make it come to fruition. Okay, there's only a certain amount that kind of like, you know, certain individuals can do. But even having said that, I know how much is on Sheikh Ibrahim's plate. But he was sat with a couple of people just at the Mawlid last week, and the sister makes the comment, says, Sheikh, we know you got a lot on your plate. I said, no. I said, I've got plenty more capacity to take on. I'm thinking, how? I've got plenty more to take on. So we've got to be people of Himma, inshallah, you know, to try and make this and take ownership of this project. So if people want to take a surah, you can see the list. Okay, I'm here. Sponsor it, or even crowdfund it. There's two ways you can take surahs on. One, people are taking surahs on and saying, I'll raise it, I'll donate it myself, as sisters did yesterday, for example. Brothers have done as well, likewise. Okay? Or I'll take a surah on, I'll reach out to my family and my close network, and I'll get the money together. Like a brother came to me yesterday, we want to take one of the last Fatiha, we want to take it. How are you going to donate it? How are you going to raise the money? Me and my friends. Okay, you can't crowdfund. Surah Fatiha said you can't crowdfund for Surah Fatiha. One people who want to donate it. No, we'll get the money together. What if you fall short? We'll make it up. Okay, we will make that money up. We want Surah Fatiha. Have Surah Fatiha. So think in yourselves, you know, who can we reach out to within our network, and what surah capacity do we have to take on? There are still surahs left there for £2,000-3,000, right up to £20,000, inshallah. So how much himmah do we have, inshallah? And wouldn't it be beautiful? We approach the end of this blessed Ramadan. All 114 surahs are taken. What a beautiful khatam to have at the end of Ramadan, inshallah, where the whole Quran, you know, has been sponsored by us and ourselves, inshallah. So please, kind of like, you know, make an effort, inshallah. Anybody got any questions? Happy to take them. Likewise, hopefully, like yesterday, even yesterday after the micro class, women just swarmed, and there's a brother outside waiting. As soon as I walk out, he's really angry. He's vexed. This is why? Because they're the ones who we jumps the gun. Then the women get frustrated, saying, "This is what always happens to us." You know, we're waiting. Brother comes and jumps in, blah, so on and so forth. But to him, what was his? He said, I wanted that surah. The surah. I said, I wanted that surah. That's why I pushed in. I didn't care whatever anybody said. I wanted to make sure that nobody else took that surah. Mashallah, he got that surah for his intention. He got that surah. So likewise for us, look at the list, inshallah. We're officially launching this program on Thursday night. Take the surahs that you can now beforehand, inshallah, and let's let's fundraise, inshallah, and really be of those first people who were the ones who fundraised for the very first Quran, inshallah. Any final questions? Okay, Jazakumullah khair. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi. No, it's not zakat, no. You should know that.
I know.
It's not zakat. Go for the question ask, yeah. Actually, it's probably worth asking the question. You should ask the question.
That's a question for everybody.
Yeah, should have done it. Because it'll be in people's minds, won't it? Can you zakat? Sadaqah, yeah, sadaqah jariyah. What a sadaqah jariyah, honestly. What a sadaqah jariyah.